Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be, firstly, a very happy new year to all of you and many rich blessings and all that sort of good stuff. May it be a phenomenal and wonderful year, and I hope you all had an absolutely fantastic festive season. Right, I know I did. Very nice and restful, very chilled with my wife. Saw a bit of family, it was absolutely marvelous. So, today, to kick off the year, my first video is going to be discussing a particular verse which really irritates people who are not Christian, right? And it is not just a verse, but a particular concept, and that concept is about God, our God, right? Yahweh, Jesus, and so on and so forth, the Trinity, all of them, right? The fact that they're jealous, that they experience jealousy, right? And the Bible makes this quite clear that God is a jealous God, and this is a problem, right? A lot of people, they're like, well, this seems petty, this seems a bit stupid, and serves as a point of criticism against Christianity, that because in the mind of the detractor, they either genuinely believe, or alternatively it is very convenient for them to believe that God is petty and all that kind of stuff, and in order to substantiate that, they use one particular verse in the Bible and then generally from there move over to try and compare the Christian God to pagan gods who do experience, and you can read the legends and you can read the law, they actually experience very petty forms of jealousy and bickering amongst each other and all that sort of thing. So on the one side, they've got very petty human qualities in the pagan gods, and because the Bible happens to affirm in the very strong and definite sense that God is jealous, they attempt to take this and link it and say, well, you see, it's just one more human invention, one more, he's just like the pagan gods, you know, jealous, petty, pathetic, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to read for you the source of the quotation in the Bible, right? And it is found in the second commandment, as it were. Now, the reason why this is so important, and we need to understand here, it's very important. The Ten Commandments were written by the finger of God himself, okay? And so the Ten Commandments is not a biography. It is an autobiography. God wrote it himself, and God is writing it himself about himself. So you actually get no stronger statement in the entire Bible, right? When Moses went up and got the tablets, God wrote with his own finger on the tablets, boom, this is, and we know in Christian theology, in Christian doctrine, we understand that the Ten Commandments is a reflection of God's character, right? And this makes perfect sense. For example, if you go to a person's house, any person's house, and let's say they've got kids, and you ask the children, what kind of rules do you have in your house, right? What are the commandments of your parents? And just from the commandments of the parents, you will know whether those parents are decent parents or whether they're rubbish parents. So if they're rubbish parents, you're going to see the house is in a state of shock. The children, their television watching is not regulated. The eating of junk food is not regulated. They've got no chores whatsoever, so no responsibility is given to the children whatsoever. Their rooms are in a state of shock. They're disrespectful, etc., and you can see either from the absence of rules, either the absence of rules or rules which are just completely stupid, right? You can tell that these parents are not particularly good parents, and so it's a reflection of the character of the parents, and it just makes absolute sense. You know, you go to any place in the world or talk to anyone, the rules and the laws of either of a country or anything like that will let you know exactly the kind of character that the legislators and that the people, not only the legislators but the people that put those legislators in power, you will then understand what the character of the people is like. So for example, a lot of people want to say that Americans, for example, are racist, are homophobe, are this, are all of that kind of stuff. But when you look at their laws, you can see that is absolutely false, right? Because Americans, you are allowed to become a citizen, right? They accept anyone. Anyone can become an American citizen. There's freedom of speech. There's basic human dignity, and all these kinds of things. And people have, and it's and if you look at the Constitution, these things are a central part of the Constitution. and which guarantee that people have certain freedoms and stuff like that. But if you go to other countries, for example, so a lot of these social justice warriors like to pretend that other cultures are more noble than the evil American culture. And the fact of the matter is, all of the laws that these social justice people value are completely absent in other cultures, completely and utterly absent. There is no affirmation of freedom of speech and the pursuit of happiness and all of these kinds of things. It does not exist in other cultures. So you can tell, so whatever anyone wants to say, or whatever claims people want to make about a particular culture or a particular person, to find out what they are like, all you have to do is go, what kind of rules and laws and legislations do they apply, not only to themselves, because that's how you can tell hypocrisy, right? If a person applies a law to some people and not to others, or different laws to themselves, you know that there's hypocrisy and things in there. And so the way the laws are structured and the kinds of laws and things like that and rules and regulations that people have testifies to their character. And this is why Christianity, and it comes out through the Bible, that the Ten Commandments is a reflection of God's character. It's an autobiographical, almost point by point sort of concise statement. This is what I'm like, this is who I am, and this is what I expect from you guys as human beings who happen to be subject to me, right? So when God writes, right, and that he is jealous, this is a stronger statement. You cannot argue this. God is jealous. End of story. So it says here, so if you are talking to a Christian that tries to make just tell them, listen, shut up, you're going against the Bible straight away. Illegitimate. So here is the verse, right? You'll find it in Exodus 20, verses 4, and this is the second commandment. The first commandment is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment, and so far, no sign of jealousy. And it makes sense, because if he's God, right? Simple as that. Now, jealousy comes in the second commandment, and this is a very, very significant point. That these things, if you're a Christian, you believe that the Bible is written the way it is, not by accident. It's not by accident. If things are in a particular order, there's a reason for it, right? So the jealousy question only comes in at the second commandment, and the second commandment says the following, right? Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth, right? Now, verse 5 qualifies this statement, right? Because if that was the only statement that you had, right, then a lot of people try to do this, or you're never allowed to make any sculptures or anything ever, right? Everything is idolatry, right? It's like, no, but then and suddenly all art forms go flying right out the window, and that's obviously silly, right? This is not going against art and making sculptures and making pottery and nice things like that. That's not what it's about. So verse 5 qualifies it, and it says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them. So when it's talking about making graven images and things like that, it's not worried about artistic expression. It's worried about specifically the practice of making idols, right? Whether in a statue, or whether in an image of any kind, or representation of any kind, or even if you set up a person to be an idol and you worship that particular individual, like a lot of people do with gurus and stuff like that. They treat the individual as if he is God, all right? That God is like, this is nonsense, right? So he says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Naturally, because if they don't exist, then it's stupid, right? For I, the Lord thy God, and this is the reason why you shouldn't do that, right? He says, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, but showing mercy unto the thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So, right. So here it comes in, right? Don't bow down to these things. So there was no jealousy when he says, I am God, there is no other, right? Now that makes sense, because if he is the only God, then no matter what we do, nothing we can do could possibly challenge that fact. He's omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's a necessary existent being, so there is no point of insecurity there's at all, because a lot of people want to say, well, jealousy represents some type of insecurity when they make this charge that God is somehow feeling insecure and he's being a bit petty and stuff like that. So when God is making the statement, thou shalt have no other gods before me, Boom, that's done. It's like I'm the only one. There's no insecurity. But it seems like an insecurity comes in when he says, when it comes to us making graven images. Now we need to ask, why is that? Why is that? So hold that question. Why is that? Why does it only come in when it comes to making graven images, right? Because here's the interesting thing. You don't need to make graven images in order to have another God, right? You could just merely believe in a different God and make no images whatsoever. Okay? It's that simple. So why does it come in at this point, right? So hold that in your mind, and we're now gonna move on to explain another thing, and it's gonna tie in together. Part of the confusion on this particular issue is when people read it, they have a very one-dimensional view of the word jealousy. Okay? Now, the problem is people conflate jealousy with envy. It's not the same thing. Jealousy and envy are not the same thing. So what is jealousy and what is envy? Jealousy is a recognition, right? Is a recognition of some sort of a truth about a thing. And the truth about that thing, right, makes you realize that this is a good thing. For whatever reason, this object, the object of your jealousy, has some sort of value, right? And you as an individual, when you are perceiving the truth of this thing, you want to do one of two things. You either want to preserve that thing, or you want to emulate it, right? So for example, if a person who feels a bit of jealousy, you see a guy driving down the road in a Ferrari, right? If you're jealous of that person, you're like, wow, beautiful car that must cost a lot, which means, he must really work really, really hard. Therefore, right, power to him, man. He must work really, really hard for that. Power to him. I respect the guy. He's obviously done he's obviously earned that. He must work his backside off. And if I want that same thing, right? So the preservative attitude is, let him have it. If people work hard, they should be able to afford Ferraris or Lamborghinis or whatever, right? And there's that principle when you want to preserve a certain thing. It's like, if you work hard, I want to preserve and congratulate him. So if you work hard, you deserve it. Which means, if I work hard, if I want that, then all I have to do is change certain habits and work hard as well, and then I'll get it as well. Right? So it's a recognition of an external truth. That external truth says, right, well, here's something that you necessarily as an individual don't have or may be lacking. And so that serves as an impetus for me to recognize in myself, either A, I don't particularly want it, so let him have it, it doesn't bother me. Or if I do want it, I recognize whatever about myself that's holding me back. Maybe I'm a bit lazy, all that kind of stuff. I could maybe get my act together, work hard, maybe I could have it too. And it's like, fine, and sometimes you might be completely incapable. So for example, you see a footballer, a really, really great footballer. All of us know there is absolutely no way that the vast majority of us are ever going to be famous footballers. That's just one of those things. It's never going to happen, right? So, and we feel jealous because, he gets the attention. He's fit, he's good looking. Maybe some of them are not even necessary. Some of them are as ugly as sin, right? But they get all the chicks, right? They get all the girls, and all these beautiful girls love them, and they have the hot life. Wonderful. But you know what? Power to him. He's a good footballer. He deserves it. And because I enjoy football, right, then seeing as though I can't emulate him, right, but because I respect what I'm seeing, I respect the talent, etc. of that footballer, or that basketball player, or that whoever it is, that painter, that artist, right? Because I respect that talent and respect the individual, I'm going to then invest my resources and my time into their practice and their industry in order to support their industry, because I appreciate what they're putting out. So if you like the footballer, you'll buy a ticket to go and watch the game. If you appreciate an artist, you're going to fund, you're going to, Patreon, whatever these days, or you're going to buy their artwork, and you're going to help them out, and you're going to support, right? You feel good about that. So, and you might feel jealous. Man, I really, really, really wish I could draw like that. And I feel that sometimes if I see people that can draw wonderfully. I wish I could do that. But I know there's not a chance in hell I'd ever be able to do that. So what's the next best thing? I can purchase their art, I can support that, and I can purchase their art, and I can, put it in a frame, and it's there for me to appreciate, right? And I preserve the industry that way. I preserve the integrity of the industry in that way by uplifting those who are really, really good at it. So that's jealousy, right? Now, jealousy can have perversions, but essentially, jealousy properly expressed, that's what it is. Envy, however, envy is a manifestation of narcissism, all right? Envy comes from the same place where you are recognizing something, right? That whatever you're recognizing, just like with a jealous person, whatever you are recognizing stands in contrast to you. But because you are a narcissist, you think that you are the most wonderful. You think that you are the all-deserving, the all-wise, the all-omnipotent. You are a narcissist. You think you are the be-all and end-all. And if someone has something that you don't, rather than say, "Oh, you know, that person really deserves it," like the guy in the Ferrari, rather than say, "Wow, you must have really worked for it," what you will instead do is you will tear him down. And you will say, and rather than say, well, the reason I don't have a Ferrari is because maybe I'm a bit lazy, or whatever the case might be, you will instead tear that person down and assume that they have got that by crook, by theft, by some illegal means, right? Or that they enjoyed some sort of privilege that you did not have. Or they enjoyed something, and basically all you try to do is tear the person down and come up with excuses as to why that person is actually not as good as they are. So the envy seeks through the narcissistic rage, because I'm wonderful, right? And if I'm so wonderful and I don't have that, that is a narcissistic injury to me, right? Because if I'm wonderful and I don't have that, but I'm wonderful, so if that person has it and I don't, it must be because they stole it. It must be, and so you tear the other person down in order to make yourself feel better, right? And do you see that today? You see it all over the place. Like, for example, one of the most fine examples that you can get, let's take feminism, right? Feminism says that we want equality for women. Now, it has become increasingly apparent that feminism has got absolutely no interest whatsoever in the equality between the sexes. None whatsoever. The interest of feminism is to tear down masculinity, is to tear it down, to obliterate it, and to humiliate it as much as humanly possible, to subjugate it as much as possible. That is the intention of feminism today, and they want special treatment. The feminist, right? And when I'm talking about the feminist, not women. I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about the feminist. Right? The feminist cannot stand the fact that men are different and that men are better than women at certain things. It's that simple, right? They cannot stand that fact, right? And it's this narcissistic thing within feminists that has been nurtured by the culture, because you hear out in the culture, you hear certain things where people say, "Oh, women can do everything men can do. If not, they can do it better." That is the most stupid statement that you could possibly imagine. Because if men and women are different, then it stands to reason they're going to have different qualities, they're going to be good at different things, and they're going to be bad at different things. It just makes sense. The idea that any gender is all-powerful and all-wonderful, right, whether it be male or female, is a delusion of the highest order. It is narcissism, right? And here's the thing. The feminist will take the narcissism of toxic men, right, bad men, and say, "Oh, we're just against the bad men," right, and use that as a smokescreen, to cover up the fact that what they are engaging in is in fact narcissistic rage, and they're attempting to demolish masculinity. And now what happens is, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So in opposition, in reaction to feminism, you have the same thing happening on the male side, right? Where you have MGTOW, which is men going their own way. You have the red pill movement, you have incels and so on and so forth, which is basically a bunch of pathetic men who are basically going through the same narcissistic rage against women. And in the same way, the feminists are like, all men are horrible, all men are terrible, all men deserve to die, all men are rapists. So these men are now saying the same thing of women and saying all women are deceitful, all women are gold diggers, all women are this and this and that. And the fact of the matter is neither one of the two, realize, well, if you weren't such an idiot, then maybe you would find a decent woman to marry and wouldn't get screwed over by, they do not recognize the deficiency in themselves to select a proper mate, and blame the fact that because a lot of them have been legitimately injured by women. The same with feminists, right? A lot of them have been legitimately injured by men. But rather than accept the fact that maybe I was an idiot, right, putting myself at the mercy of bad people, then maybe I should change something in myself and rather associate myself with better people, right? Because you get a lot of, like, these women and men, it's like, you're constantly getting in these bad relationships. Okay, what's the common denominator? I keep hooking up with people that I find drunk in a pub. It's like, well, what the hell do you expect, right? Every time you read the newspapers and stuff like that, some drunk idiot somewhere got into some kind of a problem and stuff like that. And then, because of the narcissism, they want to blame the universe is unfair on me, and the universe this, and the universe is that, rather than realizing, or maybe if you weren't a drunkard, or constantly making stupid decisions and realized that you had some sort of internal deficiency, then maybe you wouldn't have such a difficult life. So they see people doing better than them, right? And rather than try and emulate them, rather than emulate their ideal, they attempt to tear it down. Now, here's the interesting thing. The feminist, as well as these MGTOW people, right? The feminist and the MGTOW people, the feminist will look at women, so they hate men, and the MGTOW people dislike women. They're fed up with each other. Now they will look at their own camps. So the feminist will look at women, and the MGTOW people will look at men. Now within the pool of men and women, you will have men and women that represent the ideal woman and represent the ideal man. So in the world, in society, the ideal woman is not only one who is intelligent and thinks for herself, right, and is attractive, right, is not some dog, some fat slob or whatever the case might be that stuffs her face with croissants 24 hours a day, right, purple hair, the usual sort of thing, right? A lot of people, when they think feminist, they think some fat slob with neon colored hair, with hairy armpits, and is a free bleeder. That's the archetype of the feminist that people think of, right? And the reason why people think of like that is because there is an uncanny propensity for, obviously not all feminists are like that, but there is this uncanny propensity for feminists to look like that. The same thing on the side of pathetic men, right? If you think about an incel, if you think about, an incel is involuntary celibacy. If you think about an incel, right, a guy who can't get women and all, immediately you imagine some pathetic little weakling, some whiny, cringing little idiot, right? Probably bald, can't be bothered to look after himself, can't be bothered to go to the gym for more than 5 minutes in order to make himself more appealing, right? He would rather blame women for the fact that he's pathetic rather than go and try to make himself less pathetic. So these archetypes exist, and what they will do, right, and you see this especially with feminists, right, if a woman stands up, now feminists pretend to want to have empowered women who are powerful and can think for themselves and are independent thinkers, etc., etc. Yet, for some inexplicable reason, whenever a woman actually, an attractive woman, intelligent woman, actually stands up and has her own opinion, they all gang up on her and try to rip her to pieces. Why? Because the ideal needs to be torn apart. That which you are envious of, so the feminist is jealous of men. Right, it's what they call penis envy, and it's the same thing with the men on the other side. What they are envious of two things. They are envious of the men who reject them or mistreat them, right? Because the men have so much power and they've got all the wonderful things, right? The feminist has this delusion, right? And this is where the narcissism comes in. They have the delusion that this person has all the wonderful privileges. They reduce men, right, and say that because men can pee standing up, for example, and because they can pick up heavier weights, therefore all life is easier for men, right? There's this delusion. There's this one-dimensional delusion which they have to maintain in order to preserve their worldview. And these other men have the same thing, because they look at women and say, oh, women are spoiled little princesses and they get whatever they want and no one ever says anything, and so on and so forth. They have to preserve this unidimensional view of the other person in order to preserve their worldview. And then anyone who within their own camp, and you find it not only with men and with women, you even find it in races. So for example, if you look at the black community, if a black person who is attractive and intelligent actually stands up and has an original thought, then all of the Black Lives Matter people send them death threats, right? They're like, if you do not think like us, and it happens to Latinos as well. Trust me, I'm a Latino, I'm a Brazilian. It happens to us as well. If we stand up and have an original thought and we disagree with the ideology, then they turn on us and say that we're sellouts, and they try to tear us down, right? And that is what you get. So it's not just genders that can have mass narcissistic things, but races, cultures, and things like that. The British, for example. Not anymore, but once upon a time were very narcissistic. They thought they were best, and they went and they conquered everything because we're wonderful and everyone must just bow down to our rule, you know. But before they became powerful, the British Isles were the single most invaded country in all of Europe, and they constantly had to put up with people who were invading them because they thought that they were better than them. So it happens throughout history. Everyone's got it in the neck. So that's the difference between jealousy and envy, right? And you can see envy, which is a manifestation of narcissistic rage. It's a self-reference. I'm wonderful, I'm important, and if I receive any injury, then it's always someone else's fault. It's a major victim mentality. It's what you call like the covert narcissists and things like that. This major victim mentality, trying to gain some narcissistic whatever, because everyone's, poor you, you know what, you actually really are wonderful and amazing, and the sun shines out your backside and all that kind of stuff. And that's what these feminists want, unless you, and these other guys too, unless you say, oh yes, you know, you actually, shame poor you, you suffer so much, you know. Unless you do that, then they want to rip you apart. They want to totally rip you apart. Okay, so that's what it's like. That's the difference between jealousy and narcissistic, and a narcissistic rage, a narcissistic envy. So there's the difference. So when the Bible is saying that that God is jealous, what is he talking about? Right? So we go back to the thing. So it only comes in now that we have jealousy and envy. The Bible says, what's another word for envy? Another word for envy is the word covetousness. So here's an interesting thing. In the Ten Commandments, you start off, right, where God says, I am jealous. But right at the end, right, the 10th commandment says, thou shalt not covet. Okay? So there's a contrasting attitude here where the character of God, it says, I am jealous. And jealousy means I'm recognizing a certain truth. It's not a self-reference. I'm recognizing a certain truth. I have a certain affection, and I wish to preserve or uplift this particular thing, right? Versus covetousness, where it says in the last command. So there's a contrast here, even within the 10 commandments. There's a contrast where it says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass," which is an old word for donkey, "nor anything that is thy neighbor's." Right? You have no right to anything that belongs to your neighbor. No right whatsoever. Right? But the covetous person, the envious person, and what do you hear about today? That we need to constantly tax the rich, that we need to take from those who have and give it to those who don't have. Right? The Bible forbids you to covet anything that belongs to someone else. Right? And that's what social media is designed around. Social media is designed around covetousness, for us to constantly look at other people who are seemingly doing better than us, and it causes us anxiety and all these kinds of things. And you see in the world at large, there's rising levels of narcissism all over the place. everywhere. Every single person is coveting what the other person has, rather than being satisfied not only with who they are, but with what they are and what they have. No one is grateful for anything about themselves anymore. Everyone is putting these fake things, and that's what a narcissist does. A narcissist projects a false image of themselves, and you see this going on. So you've got a very interesting contrast here between the beginning of the thing. The first 4 commandments is a testament of how we relate to God and God relates to us. Right? And the last 6 commandments is about how we relate to each other. Don't kill, don't steal, and all that kind of stuff. And the very last one, thou shalt not covet. And thou shalt not covet basically embodies the first 6, because covetousness leads to, if you covet something, that is the first, that is the seed that eventually gets you the point when you covet, when you envy someone, it gets you, that is the seed which eventually leads you to then murdering that person to take what they have, or stealing from that person, or committing adultery, for example. So, oh, that man's wife, you know, that whole thing where you want what belongs to someone else, or you want what you cannot have. That is a covetousness, that is an envy, right? And it leads to people to go and do all these kinds of things. Even where it says honor thy mother and father, a lot of times, because we covet something, right, we will end up going and doing something that then dishonors our family and dishonors our parents, right? So that's the interesting thing here. So when it says that God is jealous, and here's another verse, let me give you another verse. It is in Exodus 34 verses 14, and this really drives the point home. It says, for thou shalt worship no other God. Why? For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So he's not mincing his words here. And when he says his name is jealous, it's not that his name is jealousy. It's saying the name is part of your character, right? When you say you have a good name in society, it means that you have a good standing, means that your character holds a certain weight, right? So God wants us to know that he's jealous. He's not going to tolerate an invasion in a particular area. He's like, this here, this is precious. You do not cross it. Why? Because I'm jealous. And if you cross this line, I'm going to get you. Now, let's have a look here. Interesting fact. When the Bible uses the word jealous, there's more than one word for jealous. Okay? So, the word for jealous that is applied to God is 2 words, 2 different words, and there's a third word for jealous that is never applied to God, is only applied to humans. So the one that is applied to humans is a word called kana, right? You can find it in Strong's H7065. It is this word for jealous is always applied to human beings or anyone that isn't God. All right? So it's this word is never applied to God ever, right? Kana, right? Now there's another word, another 2 words, which is only ever applied to God. So there is another word, it sounds very, very similar, but there's a different inflection, ka'ana or something like that, right? Forgive me, my Hebrew is rubbish. I'm just going to play it here quickly.
Strong's H, 7067, kana.
Right.
Kana.
So one is kana, the other one is kena, right? And they're spelt very, very, very similarly, right? At least in the English transliteration, of course. Now this word is only ever applied to God, right? And you will find it in Strong's H7067. Only ever applied to God, and it's used 5 times in the Bible. And the other one, right, is kano, right? Which is only ever used about God twice, right? The word jealous. Now, kano has an angry connotation, and kana is just a statement. God is jealous, right? So, this is actually quite an interesting study. So, in the 2 times that kano, which implies there's an anger, a connotation of anger, is in Joshua 24:19 and in Nahum 1 verse 2. And if we read the verse, it says, God is jealous and the Lord revengeth. Right? So we basically, and it only happens twice. So it supports the idea that God is slow to anger. Right? This is a biblical Christian doctrine. God is slow to anger. He prefers mercy. He prefers, that is his preference. But if so pushed, if we exceed the limits of his patience, because God draws the line, right? A lot of Christians will have you think that God will never punish. That's garbage. That's absolute garbage. It is very, very possible for you to test the limits of God's patience, where he is eventually going to be like, right, I'm sorting you out now, right? And the flood is one of the most obvious things where God got to the point and said, I'm wiping these people out, right? And the same with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So don't think that you can't exceed the limits of God's patience. It's not true, right? And any Christian who tries to tell you otherwise is an idiot. He's just it's this new fluffy stupid this watered down Christianity, this social justice Christianity that you get nowadays. It's garbage, right? So when we see in these two situations, it's because people, and it's affirming the fact that God will, if pushed, his jealousy, if you cross the boundaries of his jealousy, that he will eventually move to anger. And it says here, the Lord revengeth. So it's revenge. So it's not, God is not, he's not the aggressor, right? He's not the aggressor, right? Revenge means that something has already been done. This is a response. The Lord revengeth. God is jealous and the Lord revengeth. The Lord revengeth and is furious. So this is strong language. He's furious. So this isn't some namby-pamby, he's a little bit annoyed and stuff. He's furious. He's had enough. He's had enough, right? The Lord will take vengeance. So don't think that God is going to let it, it's okay, right? No. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. So this namby-pamby, Jesus is going to just, everyone wonderful. No. Right? God eventually has enough. So, is this a problem? No, it's not. Because we as human beings, we understand what jealousy is, right? Do you have children? Yes. Do you have a spouse? Yes. Do you have brothers and sisters? Do you have anyone in your life that you care for? Yes. Are you jealous? Yes. Right. Do you want the best for them? Yes. Do you want to preserve them? Yes. Do you want to uplift them? Yes. If you're a decent person, you will want all of these things for anyone you care for. Now, if anyone crosses the line and prevents... Now, what is the line? The line of jealousy. If anyone... So you want the best for them, you want to preserve them, you want to uplift them. If any one of those three things are transgressed by another person or by an institution, what happens? Do you get angry? Of course you do. You are violating my children. You are violating someone that I love. Therefore, I'm going to take revenge on you. Even more so, and the more innocent the person is, like for children, right? If a pedophile comes, what is a pedophile going to do? Is going to violate, right? Is not going to preserve the child. Is not going to preserve that innocence, right? It is not going to preserve the child's innocence. Does not want the best for the child, and is not going to uplift the child. Is not going to build it. Is going to destroy the child, which is why we despise pedophiles so much, because the child is the maximal innocence. And it's the same thing with animals. When we look at animal abusers, right? Animals are innocent. They even more innocent than children, because children can speak and they have intelligence and stuff. Animals are completely and utterly helpless for the most part, right? I mean, you're not exactly going to abuse a lion now, are you? But we still can, because we've got weapons and things of that sort. And we get and the more innocent something is, the more outrage we feel, to the point where we want to go and wipe the people out. It's like, how dare you do such things? And we put pedophiles in prison. We put rapists in prison, right? We put murderers in prison because they transgress those things, right? So the fact that you get angry because someone violates the boundaries of someone you care is perfectly legitimate. So when God says, I'm a jealous God, what is he saying? He says, I care about what happens to you. And because I care about what happens to you, don't you nor anyone else dare cross the line of undermining the value that I place on you as an individual. Don't you dare. So don't harm yourself, don't kill, don't murder, don't steal. And these are the commandments that come afterwards. Honor your parents and all these kinds of things. Because why? Because I want the best for you. I want to preserve you. I want to preserve you. That's why Christ died, because he wants to preserve you. He wants to give you eternal life. And he wants to uplift you, right? We fell, so God wants to uplift you. He wants to give you forgiveness, redemption, wants to elevate you. And the Bible says that we will be elevated in the new estate. We're going to have a position even above that of angels, which is crazy because we don't deserve it, right? So he cares for us. We have value. That's why he cares. That's why you care for anyone, because you recognize that that individual has value, right? Envy devalues, right? So you have a feminist that says, oh, no fat shaming. What they're actually doing, what feminists have done, and everyone can see it, what feminists done is not only have they devalued masculinity, they have devalued true femininity. They've devalued true, so they say, oh, you're not allowed to fat shame, and they want to assert that being fat is equal to being healthy. By the way, being too skinny is also a problem, right? Being underweight is a problem, right? So the fashion industry has got it wrong as well, right? And they want to say being fat, healthy at any, that's wrong. That's a perversion. That's a perversion of the ideal. They want to tear down the ideal and force you to pretend that the aberrations, that the perversions are equal to the ideal. And as a result, many, many women out there are imagining themselves healthy at any weight when they're not, which is what? It does not uplift. You do not uplift a woman by telling her that she is perfectly fine at 150 kilos. Right? You're lying. You lie. If you have any respect for the person, your first thing to do is not lie. And what does the Ten Commandments say? Do not bear a false witness. Don't lie, because they're going to injure themselves. They're going to die of a heart attack. They're going to get diabetes, whatever the case might be. There is a problem. Or even a woman that is underweight, there's a problem, right? And you are not only commending and ignoring the fact that that is harmful to them, right? But you are enabling whatever problem has caused that to happen in the first place, and saying, oh, well, this is equivalent, this is fine, this is wonderful. You hate the person, right? Because they say, oh, fat shaming and all that. Now, obviously, you shouldn't shame people. That's stupid, right? But then the virtue signaling, oh, don't shame, is a mask for the narcissistic rage that wants to make fat equivalent to healthy. It's not, right? And that's a problem. That is a problem. And that's why you're seeing these backlashes against these things. And that is how you recognize feminism for nothing but the narcissistic rage that it is. And that's all it is, right? So we can legitimately say that it is perfectly reasonable for anyone who cares about anything to be annoyed and angry and furious when that boundary of, when you violate the value of the individual. You care about the individual because you recognize their intrinsic value, and you get angry, you get furious when someone violates that value, right? So this is what God is saying when he says, I'm jealous. He says, I recognize a value in you. I recognize a value in you. So let's go back to the commandment and say, so now, when he says, thou shalt not make any graven images or any likeness of anything, and thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. Why would this irritate God and cause jealous rage? Because here you are making an image of God on earth. Think about it. If we are created in the image of God, that means God has already created his image on earth. Therefore, we do not need to create another image of God on earth. So by creating idols, you are essentially affronting and denying your own value, because your value comes from the fact that you are not only a being created by God, but you have that intrinsic moral value because you're created in God's image. That's why your value, that's why every single person on the planet, no matter who they are, has intrinsic moral inviolable value, because every single one of us is in the image of God, whether we want to believe it or not, whether we accept that or not. And no law can take that away from you. People may try. No, nothing can take that away from you. No status, no social status, no amount of money, no nothing can take that value away from you. You have intrinsic moral value because no matter who you are created in the image of God. And to make an idol of something else is not only spitting in God's face, right? Because He's God and you're making a false thing here. You are also spitting in your own face. You are cutting your nose to spite your face. Because you are denying the very thing that gives you intrinsic moral value in the first place. Right? And because God cares for you, because He actually exists, and He actually created you, like a parent, or we call Him God the Father, like a parent. A parent is like, I am your parent, right? Don't go and pretend that someone else is your parent. I'm your parent. I'm the one that looks after you, and I make these rules. And I know I'm very irritating, but I do it because I care about you. And if the child does not live up to their potential, you will notice your parents and your teachers get very irritated with you, right? You get very, very irritated with anyone who's not living up to your potential. Obviously, right? You know, and every single one of us, I think, might have heard this at some point in life. I know I heard many times when I was a kid. I mean, and I had a bit of a troubled upbringing, and only now do I realize it, because they're like, you're not living. I never knew what they meant by it. Now I do. You're not living up to your potential. You're not living up to your potential. It's because they recognize you can be better, and these people are trying to uplift you. When the person says, and it's a judgment, you're not living up to your potential, that's actually a good thing when someone recognizes that in you, because there's more, right? And in a sense, they're expressing a good form of jealousy for you. It's like, be better. And that's why they're annoyed with you, right? Because you can be better, right? And this is where God comes in. He's like, I've given you the 10 Commandments, because the 10 Commandments, and in Christian theology, we believe that God's law is a hedge of safety around us, right? It's a hedge of safety. That if we put this hedge of safety around us, and that we do not cross, and we allow no one else to cross in, then we will be safe, and we will be preserved, and we will be able to be uplifted, right? And if we respect this hedge of safety, not only around ourselves as individuals, but our families and our communities and our friends and the stranger, the person you don't know, you respect that hedge, right? Don't kill, don't steal, honor your parents. You respect that hedge, right? Because you even honor their parents by treating them properly, right? When you offend someone, you're not only offending them, you're offending the people that created them, that gave them life, right? If you respect all of this, then you have a better life. And that's why the 10 Commandments are inviolable. You do not break them, because then the whole world goes to chaos. And people do that. Think about the whole abortion, right? The whole abortion issue boils down to the violation of two principles: murder and adultery, right? People are like, oh, but rape and stuff like that. Rape is a form of adultery. Sex outside, it's not only sex outside of marriage. Any sexual activity outside marriage, any sexual activity that happens outside marriage is going to harm you. Simple as that. And as a result, because we think adultery is wonderful and is a human right, as a result, we kill, through abortion, we kill 1/4 of all babies that ever exist every year in the world. 1/4, 25% of all children that would otherwise exist. We kill them before they're even born. It's that simple. right? And so if you think about the Ten Commandments and God in that way, and why he's jealous, and why he gets irritated, and why he gets angry, you realize very, very quickly, not only is he justified in being jealous, but it's a good thing that he's jealous, because if he's jealous, it means he cares, because we experience the same thing. When we're jealous, we care, properly manifested when the concern is for others. There's a lot of false jealousy and false love out there where it's actually a self-reference. I love this person because of what they can do for me, right? Because if you truly love someone and you see that that person, that you're not good for them, you'll let them go and say, well, maybe you can find someone who will treat you better than what I can. That's true love, right? Same with a parent. You get a lot of parents who try to live their lives vicariously through their children, and as a result stunt the development of their children. That's what you call the devouring mother, or the overbearing father, and things of that sort, right? The domineering parent. That's actually a form of abuse, because you are preventing the child from developing as an individual. That's a form of abuse as well. And what God is saying, if you want to develop fully, these are the most basic 10 rules that you have to apply in life, and never violate them if you want to make sure that you have intrinsic moral value, because you're created in the image of God. So by creating false images, you are denying your dignity, your divine dignity, that you yourself, you're not divine, you're not God, but you are made in the image of God. You've been given an inviolable dignity from the divine himself, right? And if you want to be preserved, and if you want to be uplifted, you cannot violate these laws. You cannot do it, right? And God is fully justified in being jealous of anyone, of being jealous of his people, so that if anyone violates these principles, he's fully justified in sorting them out, because we would do it the same. We would do the same. If someone violates you're jealous of the people you love, and if someone violates them, you're gonna flip out, and rightfully so. So anyway, and we see it left, right, and center, all over the place. It's just envy everywhere. People are pretending to be virtuous, and all they want to do is they want to tear down masculinity, they want to tear down femininity, they want to rip apart marriage. Marriage has been completely destroyed. Marriage has been completely destroyed, right? Wonderful institution that puts two people who are completely unlike, puts them together in a way that they can improve each other and uplift each other, the institute of marriage, and have children. And if the marriage is beautiful, then the children will have something. Wow, I've got this wonderful example of masculinity and femininity. And the fact of the matter is, the vast majority of children today grow up with absolutely no concept of what the ideal masculine is, and they do not grow up with a concept of what even the ideal feminine is, because the vast majority of these single mothers, I'm sorry to say, and I make no apologies for it, right? They're single mothers because they made bad decisions, right? If you are the type of person to sleep around, you're not the type of person to be a mother. End of story, right? If you can't even be responsible for yourself, how are you going to be responsible for someone else? It's that simple. And the same with these useless men that sleep around and then abandon their kids. How many women out there with 5, 6 children, each one from a different parent or from a different father, or women that get pregnant merely because they want to go on the dole, receive housing and free subsidies and stuff like that from the government. They don't actually care about the children. The children is just a dollar sign or a pound sign, wherever, depending on where you live. And all that is messed up. That's all greed and adultery and rubbish. So that's it. So yes, God is jealous. 100% God is jealous, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing, because it means he gives a damn about you. He cares about and that's why a lot of people are like, oh, why does God care about what you do? Of course he cares. If you care about anyone, then you're going to worry about what they do to themselves and what they do to others. Right? So people are like, oh, God is, religion is so restrictive. We're not allowed to drink. We're not allowed to tattoo. We're not allowed to do all these things. It's like, think carefully about what you're doing to yourself when you do these things. When you go and take drugs, when you go and sleep around like an idiot, right? When you drink alcohol and go on the piss, and all these kinds of things, when you act irresponsibly, when you mistreat others, when you mistreat yourself. Think exactly about what the hell it is you're doing when you do these things. Anyone that gives a damn about you is going to be annoyed, is going to tell you, don't do these things. Because if they care about you, that's exactly what they should be saying. Don't do these things. Don't harm yourself. Don't harm yourself and don't harm other people. You know, stop doing it. But that's all people are interested in doing. They think it's fun. This hedonistic stupidity, right? Oh, I can do whatever I want and my truth is your truth and yours. No, there's only one truth. And that's narcissistic stupidity as well. My truth is your truth. It allows them to do whatever they want. They can tear anything down. There's no such thing as truth, so why not? God's, as the Bible says, God's law is truth. End of story. You're trying to make up your own, yeah, you can go ahead, but you're only going to get chaos. And you can look around. The world's burning around you. The West itself is eating itself. The serpent eating its tail. Completely eating itself up at the moment with all this, with all these narcissistic social justice activists running around all over the place, just doing nothing but injecting the most vicious forms of conceited narcissism into the people that are ignorant enough to believe what they're saying. You see it everywhere. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I hope this helps you out. Again, Happy New Year and thank you, and please give me a like, give me a share, subscribe on YouTube or to me on Facebook, follow my page on Facebook. There's Some Christian Guy on Facebook, Some Christian Guy on YouTube, and for those of you who are on One Way that want to go to some place which doesn't track you and all those horrible government conspiracy things, I'm on One Way as well. You know, check it out and, you know, share it about if this helps you come to terms with, you know, because I battled with this concept a lot of time. God jealous, that doesn't make sense, but now it makes perfect sense. And interestingly enough, I realized these things not necessarily through studying the Bible, but through studying psychology, actually. Yeah, it's quite interesting. A lot of these things I realized by studying psychology and sociology and how a lot of these things work, and it illuminated God not just as some thing out there, but God is a person. He's not just some ball of light somewhere with a voice. He's a person. He has feelings. He cares about things, right? And as a result, if he cares about things, he's gonna care about you, and he's gonna be angry when either you or someone else violate the principles of the human dignity and the self and the worth that you have, and you harm yourself and you harm others. It's that simple. That simple. Right, ladies and gentlemen, cheerio. I'll spot you next time. I hope this was very helpful to you, and thank you for checking this out and putting up with all of this. I hope it helps. Goodbye. Bye.